How do you then build out full AI systems? How do you take a business and then automate as many processes that you can and then deliver that to the client? That's what we're going to cover now. A full AI system is basically just a bunch of automations combined. So just like the invoicing automation that we just created, when you provide a full system, you usually automate maybe like 5 to 10 to 25, depending on how big the project is. So how do you go about delivering this? This varies from agency to agency how you actually do this. Some agencies just deliver a bunch of init inflows, where if the client wants, they can look at the executions of the init inflows, but the reality is that the client is never going to do that. So the client just kind of trusts the agency that it's set up correctly. But that is how most agencies use to do it. When we are building with Claude Code, we want to give Claude access to everything as well. So we'll do this a little differently. We're going to be building a dashboard for the client so that you can see exactly what's going on, exactly how many executions, maybe even exactly how much time these automations have saved them so far. That also allows us to provide them with tools like we just created with the invoicing tool, where if they have some process that requires like something to trigger it, like a form, for example, like we just showed, you can put those tools inside of this system as well. This also allows us to have a front end where they can see all of this, and then also have a separate back end where everything is running. And depending on the size of the project and the client that you're working with, sometimes the client wants to run everything on their own servers. And this system is great for that because the front end, the actual visuals, and the back end is all going to be running as code. And specifically the backend, we are using trigger.dev, exactly like we did in the previous automation. And because trigger.dev is open source, it means that we can host it anywhere. We can host it on a virtual machine, like a machine that's just in the cloud. We can host it on the servers that they're already running. If they're using something like Azure, which is the most normal one, that is like a cloud provider, it's called. Or if they're using AWS, Amazon Web Services, or if they're using Google Cloud. Having a system like this means that you can basically deploy it anywhere you want with a very nice user experience. Let me be clear from the start, sometimes it's overkill building out a full AI system. Let's say that you're delivering a project for a client and all they need is just like one automation done. What you could do is literally just provide the tool like we just did, connect it to something like a type form where you don't have your own front end. This is for bigger projects where you are auditing the entire business and then say, okay, these things are what we can improve. And I'm going to build this out like this and this and this. And you're going to basically get your custom dashboard, custom app where you have access to all of this. All right, let's get into how we actually build this. The first thing we're going to build out is the structure of what is really going to be a full app. We're going to have the front end. And this is going to be very similar to what we already built. It's going to be Next.js as the framework. It's going to be Tailwind CSS for the design. And then I like to use something that's called NextAuth for the authentication that works well with Next.js. And then we're going to use Resend together with NextAuth. And Resend was basically the service that we can use to send emails like magic links. And this is the most secure and easiest way to set up a login. That way you don't have to manage passwords, you don't have to manage usernames. All you're doing is just sending a magic link every time someone wants to log in. They click on that link and they're in. So it's basically like forcing a two-factor authentication every single time, which is the most secure thing that you can do. Then we have the backend. This is where all of our automations are running, and we're going to be building that in trigger.dev. We're going to start by hosting it on trigger.dev, but just know later on if you wanted to host the backend yourself, if you wanted it on something like a virtual machine or hosting the backend on the client's actual servers, then trigger.dev is the perfect thing to build with because it allows you to just take the code and just host it somewhere else as well. And then because we're building out kind of like a full app, we also need a database. For the database, I like to launch fast. And the fastest way that I've found to launch is by using MongoDB, which is a database provider. And the database is where we are basically going to be storing all of this data. So all of the invoices, for example, if we have an invoice generator, all of the client's information like the email and user information. And what's worth knowing as well is that we're also going to be hosting MongoDB in the cloud just to launch fast. If you are at one point wanting to build this entirely on the client's platform, then you can also do that because MongoDB also has a community edition that allows you to self-host it just like you can with trigger.dev. And while it's not entirely open source, their community edition is fine for what you're building as well. So that is kind of the stack that we are going to be using. And don't worry if you don't know what all of these things are yet. After watching this part of the course, you'll know exactly how to set up full AI systems like this. All right, let's get into it.